Hey, speaking about sport and never going to touch, we have the Bensons in the house talking fantasy baseball. Of course, a segment of fantasy baseball brought to you by the ballparksweaters.com. Your wife, your girlfriend, your significant other can be the belle of the ballpark by wearing a ballpark sweater. Of course, ballpark sweater, great gift. For Mother's Day or for any type of day, birthdays or whatever else, and they make it out. Check them out at ballparksweaters.com. And guys, before we jump into things and everything else like that, we were talking about 40th anniversary of the Godfather movie. Which ones do you like? Godfather 1, 2, or 3?
I'm always a believer in the first one's the best.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Definitely. What was your favorite scene in that movie, Bob?
The horse head in the bed.
You and Buzz got to sit down and talk a little bit, huh? Yeah.
I mean, there's no competition there.
No, I mean, that just really set the precedent for that movie.
Yeah, of course, we're talking fantasy baseball. Where do you want to go? You want to do fantasy baseball rankings? I got basically 2 minutes right now, guys.
Well, real quick with the fantasy baseball rankings, we've been getting all of our cheat sheets together for everybody as draft season hits high season, and we got outfielders, first basemen, and relievers here coming up. Really hot, really important rankings this year, and with the outfielders in particular, some news that I'm sure you guys have covered the last 2 weeks has dramatically changed our outfielder rankings. So I don't know if that counts in this business as a radio tease. Maybe we can talk about it on the other side of the break.
Yeah,
Pete.
definitely a radio tease.
But we made a major change, a major shakeup in our fantasy baseball outfield rankings last weekend based on something that happened off the field. So maybe we can talk about that, in a second here.
Yeah, definitely. Listen, we can talk anything you want, especially on the Fantasy Lingerie Football League, too, for that matter, as a teaser, too. That could be another one. We could tease them and say, we're going to talk about Fantasy Lingerie Football and the uniform changes for the upcoming season and never talk about it, but they said to listen in on it.
The entire Lingerie Football League is a big tease, Pete. That's the whole point of the league.
Yeah, you got
definitely the cream of the crop.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, here you go again. I'm just saying this. We talked about the All-Star basketball weekend last weekend for the NBA, and I mean, ho-hum. I mean, I would have been happier if they would have had some of the cheerleaders out there. I can't wait for the All-Star Fantasy Lingerie Football League All-Star weekend. I'll be glued to the tube,
Have you heard that this was going back a couple months, but there are talks of a lingerie basketball league as well.
Well, I heard that there was, and that Dennis Rodman. Dennis Rodman is the commissioner, or he's involved in it somewhere or another.
Yeah, I heard that as well, and in addition to that, because we know you can't get enough of the lingerie football league, especially Puzz.
Yeah.
There's going to be a league in Canada starting up this summer.
Wow.
During the CFL season, and the Canadian Lingerie Bowl is actually going to be the same weekend as the Grey Cup. What else would you have it?
Well, yeah.
25 minutes from the border out there.
He's there, passport in hand. Okay, guys, listen, we're going to take a time now. Of course, we're talking to Bob and Jonathan Benz, a segment brought to you by ballparksweater.com. Check out my website. It's fedoraonsports.com. Of course, we launch all their blogs right there, so you can pick out the players that you want to get in. I'm dying to find out who went from the penthouse to the outhouse in their lingerie football picks. We'll be Okay, we're back here on Fedora on Sports, of course, talking fantasy baseball rankings 2012, and also talking about ballparksweaters.com. Check out my website, fedoraonsports.com. Where do we want to go? John, we were talking about the rankings 2012, and you had a change in your fantasy baseball draft. This is not compared to what's happening with Braun out there with the Milwaukee Brewers, is it?
Absolutely. You hit it right on the head. Back in December, the date was December 10th. On December 10th and that following weekend, we, on your show, announced Ryan Braun as our number one fantasy baseball draft choice for 2012. Now, this was still during football season, so I'm sure everybody was interested in hearing what Bob had to say about making Braun the number one pick. But that same day, or the day after, I believe, that we were on your show touting Ryan Braun as the number one pick, the failed PED test came out. So we backtracked a little bit, and we moved Ryan Braun because of the 50-game suspension. When our outfielder rankings came out for 2012, we had moved Ryan Braun down from the number one spot all the way down to number 18 in outfielders. So his draft value, because we knew he was going to miss 50 games, was dramatically reduced. Now, last week, go back to last Friday, Braun, and then the arbitration, the suspension's lifted. Braun automatically jumps back into the top ranking on our outfield list. So Matt Kemp falls to 2. The other 17, 18 players that were ahead of Braun all fall down one spot, and we have some shakeup going on in our outfielder rankings. And I think it's safe to say that Ryan Braun, now that he's going to play all 162 games, is a lock for the number one pick in a league where you only have National League only players. And I think Bob is probably still on board with recommending Ryan Braun as the overall number one pick in any draft.
Really? Bob?
Well, we like Braun, we like Kemp. I like guys that can score points in every category. And one thing about stolen bases, when it comes to given the same amount of point value as a home run. That's one of the things that makes fantasy baseball not realistic, of course. But when you have a guy like Matt Kemp who can steal bases and Ryan Braun who can steal bases and hit home runs for you, they're going to help you in both categories as opposed to a guy like Pujols or Cabrera who are fantastic hitters but can't help you in the stolen base category.
Okay. Quickly, let's go with Bob. I know that you want to touch on some of the draft strategies, but before we go there, closers, Jonathan?
Well, real quick with closers, there's a lot of upheaval. Mariano Rivera, for the last 3 years, actually ever since our website has been online, he's been our guaranteed lock, number one, no question, closer. This year, he actually falls a little bit in our rankings. He falls down to number 3. Two young guys, two real hot arms in the NL East have passed him. Craig Kimbrell of the Atlanta Braves. I think it's without question the Braves have the best bullpen in the majors. He's our number one closer coming into the season. And Drew Storen of the Washington Nationals, as mediocre as the Nationals are sometimes, Storen definitely locks it down in the saves department. So we have him at number 2. So Craig Kimbrell number 1, Drew Storen number 2, and Mariano Rivera falls all the way from 1 down to 3. So we still like him. But, he certainly, I think the writing's on the wall that this might be his last year.
Okay, quickly, Bob, we got about a couple of minutes here. Let's talk a little bit about the fantasy baseball draft strategy. Where do you want to go with that?
Yeah. I've given some general strategy tips in terms of your draft, which is going to be coming up here in a couple of weeks. Now, 11 million people play fantasy baseball, and we don't expect all those 11 million to be as crazy about it as Jonathan and I. So there's some general guidelines that you want to use. Now, when you think of fantasy baseball, it's not real baseball. Okay, 50% of the stats come from hitting, 50% of the stats come from pitching, and 0% come from defense. So guys like Yadier Molina, who are great defensive players, are never going to have the same value as they do in real baseball. It's also not Moneyball, so walks don't really count. All a walk is maybe a chance to score a run for your team. But for a guy like Carlos Pena, who had 101 walks last year, 225 batting average, 357 on base, however, he's not going to be as valuable because all a walk is for Carlos Pena is a chance to not hit a home run and drive in some runs. So as we just said, stolen bases and home runs have equal value. So when you go about drafting hitters, if you don't want to look at all 5 rotisserie categories, if you just draft based on stolen bases and home runs, the stolen bases will take care of the runs. The home runs will take care of the RBIs and the runs. The only other thing that you have to keep an eye on is your batting average, because most managers will follow the stolen base home run strategy. So take a keen eye to batting average, and that'll help you in your overall standings. Now, when it comes to pitchers, pitchers are more inconsistent on their stats from year to year. They're also more prone to injury, and there's a lot more of them, which is why they get drafted usually in the middle rounds as opposed to the early rounds. Predicting wins is very difficult in fantasy baseball because luck goes into it. Take a look at Detroit last year. Doug Fister last year had 216 innings pitched, a 2.83 ERA, and a 1.06 WHIP. He only won 11 games and lost 13. His teammate Matt Scherzer at Detroit had 195 innings pitched, a 4.43 ERA, 1.35 WHIP. He was 15-9. So there's no fairness in that. Okay, so when it comes to pitchers, draft on strikeouts and whips, because walks will always get you in trouble, whether it's Little League or Major League Baseball. Draft strikeouts and whip, and that'll take care of your wins and your ERA. But then the second thing you need to look at when it comes to pitchers is always draft saves. If you play in a mixed 12-team league, that means there's 2.5 closers available per team. Make sure you're the manager that gets 3 of those closers as opposed to getting stuck with 2, because if you get 2, you're going to be at the bottom of the saves category.
All right, sounds good. Okay, guys, I hate to do this to you, but we're running out of time here. Of course, the segment of fantasy baseball brought to you by BallparkSweater.com. A ballpark sweater is a perfect gift for the team mom of your travel baseball or softball team. Think about going to Ballpark Sweaters. Sweater, singular.com, sweater.com. Okay, guys, you have a great weekend. Of course, check out my website at Spadora on Sports, and you can see their blog, but also you can check out their blogs and information at fantasybaseballdugout.com. Have a great weekend, my friends.